завладел полностью округой, так что виден вдали каждый стебелёк. Да чего ж хороши ночи под Калугой, в этом я лично сам убедиться мог. А туман на луга ложится, а река под мостом поёт. А тебе все равно не спится, а заря на небе встаёт. Так и брызнет роса, с ветки чуть задеты. Ты уж лучше не стой под ольхой густой. Дорогая моя, ты мне посоветуй, расскажи, как мне быть с этой красотой. А туман на луга ложится, а река под мостом поёт. А тебе все равно не спится, а заря на небе встаёт. Сколько раз я бродил здесь вдвоем с подругой, сколько звезд насчитал я на дне реки. Да чего ж хороши ночи под Калугой, только жаль, что они очень коротки. А туман на луга ложится, а река под мостом поёт. А тебе все равно не спится, а заря на небе встаёт. А тебе все равно не спится, а заря на небе встаёт. А заря на небе встаёт.
Hello, welcome to Culture TV and to Advanced Russian. So, you've just listened to a traditional, and I'm sure you'll agree, very beautiful piece of music, a Russian song, back from the Soviet times, called «А туман на луга ложится». «А туман на луга ложится». And the mist, and the fog, is lying down on, or is descending down onto the meadows. You would have noticed that it's quite a fast song, quite a quick pace at times, but this is just common to this kind of genre. I hope that you still manage to follow it. What we're going to do now is I'm going to go through the whole song with you. We'll look at any grammar nuances, we'll look at the language used, and hopefully we'll learn some new vocab as well. So at the end of the video, if you listen to the song again, you should be able to understand all of it. However, before we start, I'd like to ask you a big favour. First of all, could you please comment below if you find this style of video, where we look at Russian media, songs, elements from films, cartoons and so on, like we've done already, useful? If yes, then can you also recommend to me or let me know what kind of genre you prefer? Because at the moment I'm doing a bit of guesswork. I'm just assuming that it would be useful and interesting for you to look at traditional Russian songs. If you want to see something else, then do let me know about that. Right, let's get straight into it then. Here's our first line. Лунный свет завладел полностью округой. Лунный свет завладел полностью округой. Лунный свет is the moonlight. So we have an adjective, лунный, anything to do with the moon, so lunar, and then свет is light. Лунный свет. Then the verb Владеть on its own without the prefix means to own. For example, I don't know, a farmer might own some land. Then, if we add on za at the start, we get завладеть. And this is very rarely used, I have to say. And it kind of conveys that you're becoming an owner of something, or you're occupying an area. So in this context, really, we're talking about the moon rising up in the sky and illuminating the whole surrounding area, the meadows, the fields. Полностью is a very good word. It's very commonly used in Russian language. I suggest that you use it in your speech as well. It's an intensifier and it means fully, completely, or whole. Then we have округа, which is the surrounding area. And we've declined it to округой in the instrumental case because the verb владеть or завладеть is followed with this case. Next we have так, что виден вдали каждый стебелёк. Так, что виден вдали каждый стебелёк. Так, что would mean something like such that or in this way. So going back to the previous line, the moonlight illuminated the surrounding area in such a way that виден, which is actually a special type of participle of the verb видеть, which is to see. Then we have вдали, вдали, which means in the distance. It's all one word and it means, well, not really far away, but, just about visible. Каждый, every. And then this is a rare word we have here, стебелёк. Стебелёк is the stalk. So in other words, the moonlight illuminated all the surrounding area such that you can see even the smallest stalks far away in the distance. In other words, the moon is very bright. До чего ж хороши ночи под Калугой. До чего ж хороши ночи под Калугой. Okay, so at the start we have an expression here, до чего ж. Remember that the one letter ж is just the contracted form of же, the modal particle. До чего ж means literally up until but intensified with the ж. That's literally. But this expression is mainly used with interjections, so exclamations, to kind of really intensify and convey that something is just so good or so bad to its greatest extent. So yes, it can be used both in negative and positive contexts. In English, we would probably just say how nice or how horrible. Then хороши is the short form adjective of the word хороший. And then ночи are nights, под Калугой. So под is a preposition that literally means under, and then Kaluga on its own, Kaluga, is a city in Russia. Под Калугой actually means near Kaluga or by Kaluga. This is common in the Russian language, especially with geography, is whenever you're talking about the area surrounding a city or nearby, you don't always have to say near, you can actually say under. You might have heard of Podmoskovye, which means the Moscow region. So the sort of not districts, but the whole region or county, if you like, that surrounds Moscow. And here we're following with the instrumental case. В этом я лично сам убедиться мог. В этом я лично сам убедиться мог. So, в этом means in this, yes. Я лично сам. Сам, remember, means by yourself or on yourself, so something is done independently. Then we have this word, лично. Also very common in the Russian language. I strongly recommend you use it. Literally, it means personally. And there are two uses for it. The first one is exactly as it is in English, personally, i.e., maybe you don't know someone personally. If someone asks you, do you know this person? No, not personally. Нет, лично не знаю. Or it can be used as an opinion phrase to give your standpoint or point of view on something, and you usually use it not to seem harsh, or maybe even to show your personal experience. If you don't want to seem too extreme with your opinion, or you don't want to maybe cause an argument, you can say лично я так думаю. It's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying that this is the right or the wrong way to think. This is just personally what I think. Or maybe if you're talking about your personal experience, you can also say лично when maybe you're reciting a story from, I don't know, something in the past. Then we have убедиться, which means to persuade yourself or be convinced. Now, убедить on its own, not as a reflexive verb, means to persuade someone. By adding on the ся, it means you're persuading yourself. In other words, you're convinced. Мог, obviously, the imperfect of мочь, to be able to. Okay, I'm going to leave the chorus to the end, and let's just move on to the next verse. Так и брызнет роса с ветки чуть задетой. Так и брызнет роса с ветки чуть задетой. The verb брызнет comes from the infinitive брызнуть, which is the perfective and it means to spray. Роса is dew. С ветки, ветка is a branch. When we have the preposition с in this case, it does not mean with, but rather off or coming off from. And in this case, it will actually be followed with the genitive. So whenever something is coming off, so moving off, and you're using с, then it's the genitive. С ветки, чуть задетый. Чуть means slightly. Also, you will hear in Russian very often чуть-чуть, which means a very little bit or slightly. And задетый comes from the verb задеть, which means to touch or come into contact with something, but only very slightly, softly, and kind of like to nudge. Так и we can't really translate in this case. Так is probably something like in this way. So in other words, if you slightly nudge a branch, then the dew will just easily just come and spray off. Yes, that's what we kind of mean with так и. It's so easy. It's just done so readily. Okay. Ты уж лучше не стой под ольхой густой. Ты уж лучше не стой под ольхой густой. Okay, let's break it down. Ush is a modal particle. I can't translate it really here. It's just kind of to intensify it. It's something like indeed or certainly. I'll come back to this in just a moment. Лучше, of course, literally means better, but in this case it's used to make a suggestion or show some kind of preference. Не стой, so we have an imperative here. Don't stand. Стой comes from стоять. Под ольхой. So remember, под is followed with the instrumental. Therefore, ольхой is from ольха, which is an alder tree. Then we have the adjective густой, which means thick, or maybe if you're describing foodstuffs, then it means viscous. But if we're talking about trees, then of course it means thick or dense, so there's a lot of foliage. Now, ты уж лучше не стой под ольхой густой. In other words, preferably, I recommend you to, I think it would be better that you don't stand under the thick alder tree. So whoever's singing is recommending to ты, so we have some kind of dialogue maybe going on here. We of course don't know who this ты is, but in other words, the speaker is giving their opinion on it would be better not to do that, and that's why we're using лучше here. So you would be better off not standing under the thick alder tree. Дорогая моя, ты мне посоветуй. Дорогая моя, ты мне посоветуй. Дорогая моя is an address, very often, as you can imagine, used in relationships to the wife, for example. My dear, literally. Ты мне посоветуй. Now, of course, in the imperative here, which is what we're seeing, we don't always need the actual personal pronoun. Sometimes it is included, though. Посоветуй мне, recommend to me, that's why we're using the dative case. So to me, yes. Посоветовать means to recommend, and we're using the perfective here, okay? because she's not recommending all the time. It's not a continuous thing. Just give me one piece of advice. Расскажи, как мне быть с этой красотой. Расскажи, как мне быть с этой красотой. Again, рассказать is perfective. Расскажи, imperative of that form. Again, tell me once. Don't keep telling me every day, but tell me once. Как мне быть? How should I be is this literally. So, what should I do? How can I manage с этой красотой? Красота is beauty. Here we're obviously using the instrumental case because this preposition с means with. So tell me, what should I do with all this beauty? In other words, the singer is just so fascinated, so overwhelmed by the beauty around him, he doesn't know what to do, he doesn't know what to feel. He's just full with so many emotions. Okay, next verse. Сколько раз я бродил здесь вдвоем с подругой. Сколько раз я бродил здесь вдвоем с подругой. Сколько раз, how many times. Now, бродить means to stroll around. It can sometimes mean to do it aimlessly. Very often it has negative connotations, and it can mean that you're strolling around somewhere in the night. Although here it's used more positively, of course, and it means just to be strolling around in the meadows. Здесь, here, and then вдвоем. This translates as together, but only with one person. Okay, this is an interesting nuance of the Russian language, and some other Slavic languages have this as well, is where you're only talking, where you have pronouns, where you're only talking about two people. So there are only two of you. Okay, it still means together, but it's only one other person. С подругой, and this is obviously a female friend. So I've been strolling around here so many times with my friend. Сколько звезд насчитал я на дне реки. Сколько звезд насчитал я на дне реки. Again, same construction. So many stars. Звезд is the genitive, remember, of звезды. One star is звезда. Many stars also in the nominative will be звезды. And in the genitive, we just remove the звезд. Then, считать on its own means to count. Now we can add on prefixes, na and по, to make it perfective, but the other aspect to this is really that there is a lot of it. You've done lots of counting. Now, I should really probably explain the difference between these prefixes. So, считать, it just means to count. If you say я считал, it means I was counting. So you're talking about the activity of counting. Посчитать is the perfective, so I counted. It's just the perfective of считать. Now, what about насчитать? Whenever someone says я насчитал or я насчитала, we're kind of expecting them to follow with a number, with the result. So, how many did you count then? Я насчитал and then the number. So you're talking about the result here. Remember that with perfective aspect, we're very often interested in the result, the outcome. And насчитать, yes, on one hand means to do a lot of counting. So presumably, whatever you're counting, there is a lot of it. Alternatively, you're just using this to, give the total. What did it all come up to then? Now, of course, here the singer hasn't given a number, so we're looking at the first scenario where we're just talking about there being loads of stars. На дне реки, so on the river bed. So you can imagine the river is reflecting the night sky. На is followed with the prepositional case here. Same sentence we have here as we saw earlier. Только жаль, что они очень коротки. Только жаль, что они очень коротки. Жаль is just another form of жалко. Both of those mean it's a shame. Только, of course, means only, but in this case it can also mean though or however or otherwise. Very common to hear in spoken language. It's just a more informal, probably, way of saying however when you're giving a contrast. So, unfortunately, they are very short. Они очень коротки. Now again, коротки is the short form adjective. Now let's have a look at the chorus. А туман, на луга ложится. Туман is fog. На луга is the meadows. Луг is a meadow. На луга on the meadows. And then ложится. Ложить on its own, so not the reflexive form, means to lie something down. So when you are moving an object somewhere else and lying it down, so horizontally on a different surface, ложится, so the reflexive form of that is you are moving yourself down somewhere on a horizontal surface. Very often this means to go to bed. А река, река, река под мостом поёт. А река, река, река под мостом поёт. And the river, river, river is singing under the bridge. Мост is a bridge, под мостом, and then поёт is from петь, which means to sing. А тебе все равно не спится. А тебе все равно не спится. And yet you still can't fall asleep. So spится is a verb that follows with the dative case, and it means to be able to sleep or to fall asleep or to sleep well. Very often in the morning, Russians might ask each other, как тебе спалось? And that means, how did you sleep? Did you manage to fall asleep? Did you sleep well? If you say мне не спалось, it means I couldn't fall asleep or I didn't sleep well at all. Всё равно means yet or still, so maybe even regardless, we could say. And finally we have заря, заря, заря на небе встаёт. Now, in the whole song, I have been removing stress from words if the stress was changed in the original lyrics, in the original song, in the music. And that, of course, happens, as you should remember from last time, purely to keep the rhythm going. In songs, you will notice that the stress sometimes is not the same as it is in spoken language. So it is actually na nebе. That's the correct way to say it. In the song, it was на небе. Okay? Заря is the dawn, and вставать means to get up. So заря на небе встаёт is the dawn is rising up in the sky. Okay, so that was the whole song. I now recommend that you listen to it again, and hopefully you should be able to understand all of it. If not, remember you can always ask comments in the comments section or even email us. That's also perfectly fine. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this. See you next time. Goodbye.